Welcome to this video related to problem-based learning in health profession education. My name is Muhammad Hassan Taha. I am the director of the Medical Education Center at the University of Sharjah and the coordinator of the Master of Leadership in Health Profession Education, as well as PhD in Health Profession Education. In this series of videos, we will be explaining problem-based learning in health profession education. We'll start with the concepts related to problem-based learning, and then we'll move forward to the running sessions of problem-based learning, then the role of the students and the facilitator, how experienced facilitator facilitate problem-based learning, and finally, we will end up with how to construct effective cases for problem-based learning. So this will be the outcomes of the first set of this series of videos. Now let us start by explaining the science behind problem-based learning. And let us, before explaining the science behind problem-based learning, and before defining problem-based learning, I want to ask you to just reflect, what does problem-based learning mean to you? Problem-based learning is a student-centered, constructive approach where small groups of students collaborate to solve a complex, real-world clinical cases. Students act as active learners who identify learning objectives, then research independently and apply the scientific knowledge. So, from its name, the start of the learning process is from the problem. And student-centered is the key word. And when we say constructive approach, we are referring to constructivism learning theories in which the learner activates the prior knowledge. And the real-world clinical case is also one of the key words, because this will create authenticity in problem-based learning. And if we look at the definitions also, active learner is a key word, because the role of the student should be active learner, and while the role of the teacher should be as a facilitator. And the last line of this definition, identifying the learning objective, this will be done by the student, research independently by the students, and apply the scientific knowledge by the student. So, in a summary, problem first, student-centered, collaborative approach, and self-directed learning. So, it's an educational approach in which complex real-world problems are used as a vehicle to promote student learning of concepts and principles, as opposed to direct presentation of fact and concepts, in which we have to consider these important 3 C's in education. These 3 C's: constructivism, collaborative learning, and contextual anchor. In constructivism, the learners build knowledge through experience, not passive perception. In collaborative learning practice, small group dialogue drives deeper processing and critical thinking. In contextual learning, clinical problems activate relevant schema and increase transfer. And also, most importantly, we have to highlight here, learners identify their own gaps and own learning needs, and this promote metacognition, which is knowing how we learn. So, what is the rationale behind problem-based learning? The traditional lecture-based curricula characterized by passive learning. There is a fragmented knowledge, weak knowledge transfer, poor clinical reasonings, low learner engagement and motivation, and finally, lack of integration. And problem-based learning has been introduced to solve all these problems. Now, we'll see the educational foundation of problem-based learning. The educational problem-based learning based on several learning theories, starting from the constructivism learning theory, and the core concepts here: learner build knowledge from experience, and problems trigger schema in our minds construction. The other theory is a social constructivism theory, and the core principle here: knowledge co-constructed through interaction, and group discussion is the learning mechanism. And adult learning theories outline relevance and self-directed learners. Others, they want to learn from relevant things, and they are self-directed learners, and the clinical problems align with adult learning motivation. Also, experiential learning approach, learning cycles from experience, concrete experience, then reflecting, then abstract conceptualization, and then active experimentations. And this actually in session 1 and then self-directed learning and session 2 in problem-based learning mirror this cycle clearly. Also, self-directed learner diagnose needs and evaluate the process. And this is very clear when the 5th step and 6th step outline this, and we'll be explaining this when we talk about the 7-jump approach. The situated learning theory, knowledge is inseparable from the context. The clinical context prevent inert knowledge, and we should avoid inner knowledge, which is obvious in classical teaching. Also, it enhances the cognitive apprenticeship. And the core principle here: expert thinking made visible through modeling, and tutor models clinical reasonings via questioning. Problem-based learning fosters collaborative learning, and the core principles here: collective thinking exceed individual capacity, and group hypothesis richer than solo reasoning. And finally, when we think about the metacognitions, learners monitor and regulate their own thinking. And the link to problem-based learning, reflection, and self-assessment are built in every steps of problem-based learning. The key insights from the previous 2 slides related to the theoretical foundation of problem-based learning: no single theory fully explains problem-based learning. Its strengths lie in the theoretical pluralism, all theories. BBL is the only educational model, or let's say, one of the rare educational models that simultaneously operationalize all 9 theories and frameworks. Now, let us go to the core principles of problem-based learning. Let us see these 8 principles. So, one of the core principles: learners begin with authentic learning. Students construct knowledge actively. Learning is collaborative. Learning is contextual within the context. Students identify their own learning needs. And the self-directed learning in problem-based learning drives knowledge acquisitions. There is integration not only by the basic and clinical science, no, by the basic clinical science, and we can integrate social accountability values and principles as well as the psychological aspects in problem-based learning. And reflection improve future learning in problem-based learning. Now let us compare between PBL and the traditional model. The teacher role in traditional model is expert, while in problem-based learning as facilitator. Student role in teaching in traditional education is a passive, while in problem-based learning, active, constructor, and self-directed learner. The learner sequence in problem-based learning in the traditional education from concept to application, while the learning sequence in problem-based learning is from problem to concept to application. Assessment in traditional learning is summative, recall, while he is programmatic and encouraging throughout the process and reflection. The knowledge integration in the traditional education is a discipline, specific silo here is interprofessional, could be our multidisciplinary. Interprofessional, if we use interprofessional education, problem-based learning. The clinical reason here is rare, but here the clinical reason here is explicit. The motivation here is primary, extrinsic, and traditional here is intrinsic, because problem relevance. When it comes to the long-term retention, here is modestly supported, here strongly supported in problem-based learning. So this is a classical style. The teacher sit here and students learning this way. And this is in problem-based learning. As you can see, the facilitators join the members as the students or the group as actively passive as part of the group. So the learning cycles in problem-based learning, we have the problem presented, then brainstorming, then they identify the need, self-directed learning, then wrap-up sessions which facilitate the knowledge transfer. So what is the role of the students and the facilitators and the scribe in problem-based learning? Students are divided into three categories. The leader, who should lead the group throughout the discussion in the two sessions, encourage all members to participate, maintain group dynamics, keep to time, ensure group keeps to task in hand, ensure scribe can keep up and make accurate record, and also participate in discussion. The scribe is the one who records the points and help groups order their thoughts, participate in discussion, and record resources by the group. While the group members follow the steps of the process in sequence, participate in discussion, listen to and respect contributions of others, ask open questions, and research all learning objectives. So this is the role of students in problem-based learning, and we'll have a specific video related to the role of the facilitators in problem-based learning. So in a principle, we have the problem, then the first session about brainstorming to identify the needs, then they have the needs, then go in between for self-study, then get new information, and then they come back and report this to the entire class. So now we come to the end of the first video related to problem-based learning, in which we explain the general principles, we define problem-based learning and the theoretical foundation of the problem-based learning. And the second video of the series related to the problem-based learning will be how to run a problem-based learning following the 7-step approach, which is adopted by Masterclass.